All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I am chatting with the one, the only Dapper Dinosaur. If you guys are unfamiliar with his YouTube channel, he does a lot of really cool debunking stuff and scientifically based stuff. And there is a link below to it, the Dapper Dino down below for his YouTube channel. And also, I've also included his Twitter page, so you can follow him there as well for more cool shit. And
yes.
Also, if you guys do dig what I do here, I have multiple ways you can help support the show. You can become a patron, or you can do maybe a 1 or 2 time donation through my PayPal me, or you can grab something off of my wish list. Christmas is coming to help me out with the show. It's all stuff that is based on the show. So, and any money that I make from this is going directly into the payments for this goddamn computer that I bought. So there you go.
Yeah, they could be expensive. My goodness.
Well, I got an Alienware because I needed the processing speed. So, yeah, and it was $3,000.
Oof. Yeah, I've spent that and more on PCs. The current rig I'm running, actually, my budget was $7,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
so you got a pretty decent one.
Yeah, well, so all my stuff is CGI, or well, not all of it, but there's a lot of CGI and the full 3D animation and stuff. So the thing is, each one of my frames on my old computer would take 15, 16 minutes to render. I can't do that. That's not viable. So now
you need to do it faster.
Exactly. So I've done some tricks and I've gotten a much better computer. So now I can actually, still it takes me forever, but to get the animation done, but
Well, it's faster than the old forever.
Well, yes. Yeah. I couldn't tomorrow I'm premiering, actually 26 hours from now, I'm premiering a video.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 25 minutes long. Just over half of it is animated. It took me about 45-ish hours to do.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was a lot of...
That's a lot of work, man.
Yeah. I was pushing. Went 6 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. yesterday, making sure it all got done in time for me to upload it for my patrons so they can see it for all of today, and then it can go to schedule for tomorrow.
That reminds me, guys, I do have a link to his Patron page as well, in case you guys do want to support the show.
Yes, I do have several tiers. It starts all the way down at $1, so if you just want to toss $1 my way, that's perfectly fine.
Beer money.
Yeah, exactly. But, it goes... There are some pretty decent things, and the thing is, even at the lowest tier, you get access to stuff early. You get access to a few videos that you can't find otherwise because they're just unlisted and not in any of my playlists. You get access to the Discord server for patrons. So even at $1, you're still getting almost everything you're getting at any of the other tiers, really.
That's not bad, man. You're a pretty generous guy when it comes to that.
Well, I figure if you're going to give me some money, you might as well get something for it, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's what I offer pretty much high fives and I don't know. We'll see what stickers. When I get more stickers printed up, I'll probably start sending all my patrons some freebie stickers and once I get t-shirts done up, then I'll add higher tiers because really I'm like 1, 2, and 5 or 3 and 5 or something like that.
Okay.
Because I don't really want to rip people off, but not that that's what I'm doing, but you know what I mean. I don't want to gouge people. People have a hard enough time making ends meet, it seems, these days.
Well, and that's what I tell people is if you can't afford it, then don't give. I mean, it's fine. I'm not here to take your money. I'm here to... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I wish I could be a patron for everyone whose work I respect.
Exactly. But it's just not possible for everyone. You got to pick and choose, and I get that.
Yeah, it's true. Well, anyways, so Mr. Dinosaur, you know what I do here? I talk to people about their journeys away from religious belief or faith or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, you take us down that little journey from that point to the point you're at now where you've decided to start using your voice to speak up about scientific, nonsense woo-woo stuff and debunk it and all that kind of thing.
So I grew up attending a church that was pretty big into young Earth creationism. There was a lot of young Earth creationism. It was the church taught that the Earth was 6,000 years old. The Noah's Ark story wasn't in any way metaphorical or anything. You might be able to draw some moral lessons from it, maybe, but that wasn't the point. The point of the story was this was a real thing. This happened. That's very much anti-evolution. But the problem is that I had the audacity to, one, be interested in things like biology and taxonomy from a young age, as well as to have a fairly low amount of belief bias. People who know me for a very long time have known that I've changed my mind on a lot of things that people tend not to change their mind on.
Sure.
So, I guess I stayed a young Earth creationist probably until sometime in high school, because I remember in high school, in my and actually I went to a Roman Catholic high school, but they were actually less I guess conservative on the idea of the age of the Earth and biology than the church I went to. So the Catholic high school was like, oh yeah, no, this is the theory of evolution. We're going to talk about how new species arise through mutations, and we're going to give you an overview of current thinking on abiogenesis, which at the time was still we've come a long way there.
Yes. Now
since when I was being taught that, but if at the time I was still a young Earth creationist, and I was like, well, what about this and this, and I would spout these young Earth creationist talking points. And unfortunately, my teacher probably wasn't prepared for that. I don't think he was used to those things, those objections being raised, because I don't think previous students had really bothered to do that.
Right.
So that didn't really do much to dissuade me. But I did start reading. I started reading some of the arguments back and forth, because one of the things that really got me was, I guess, it's sort of the same thing that have you heard of Aaron Ra's phylogeny challenge?
Of course, yes.
Well, so this was before he ever issued this, But I was essentially doing the same thing. I was like, all right, well, if we've got these special creations, why are there these higher order connections between life forms, right? Because I was in high school, and I could list off like almost every family in class Mammalia and order, just off the top of my head. And I was like, well, why do these exist?
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And so I was just thinking to myself, like, why do these things exist? Like, why is it that, say, Arctoidea and Mustaloidea and Canoidea all fit within a group, and the civids and hyenas and felines all fit into another group, but then they fit into a bigger group called Carnivora? Like, what's the deal with this? Why is that a thing? And so, like, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because, well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're starting from a special creation, because there's no reason.
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you look at. If you look at like fictional worlds where things really are intelligently designed in terms of like fantasy creatures or something,
sure,
unless the author has explicitly written some kind of evolutionary background for this, what you tend to see is essentially unrelated groups of animals that fill in certain niches or whatever, but they don't have any obvious relations to each other, and they don't obviously fit into some pattern like that.
Right.
But that's not what I was seeing in the world. And so I was starting to read articles about evolution, because I figured, well, if it's not true, then this should be pretty easy to figure out. And if it is, well, I guess I was wrong.
Hey, at least you had the courage to think that way.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I noticed was that in going to the Catholic high school was that, like, this isn't like a requirement to believe most of the other things that people tend to believe when they believe in God or Christianity specifically. Because, the church I was in was always like, oh, no, that maybe this isn't what's going to send you to hell, but it's the first step down the path towards damnation or something, or it can be, at least. I wouldn't say it's the first step, it was one of those, like, once you start leaving the quote unquote biblical worldview,
yeah,
it's all downhill. And I was like, well, and that's actually one of the things I point out on my channel, is it's actually a separate issue. Does God exist? Or even, does the God of the Bible exist? And is evolution true? Those aren't the same issue.
No.
And so that's one of the reasons why I don't class any of the content on my channel as really being either pro or against any religion, because I'm here to talk about things like biology and cosmogony and sometimes physics, although my physics is not as strong as other areas and things like that. And to me, when talking about that, I don't really care what you think about God or Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha. Like, if you've got some data, I'll find that interesting for the purposes of my channel. But otherwise, let's just talk about things like, genetically derived phylogenetic trees, or, interesting predictions from the Big Bang Theory and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so around high school, I was starting to realize that, there was something to this whole thing, and that the sort of creationism that I was being taught just wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was not something that actually ended up making me leave Christianity. And actually, I generally don't talk about whether or not I ended up doing that.
Okay.
I certainly, at the very least, left that. I've actually had several changes in position on religion since then.
Okay.
But it certainly was certainly not something I was just like, nope, the whole thing is just nonsense. There's nothing to it. Because the thing is that it's not connected. Like, Christianity has things to say about like spiritual matters that don't really depend on where you come from. Like,
yeah, granted, yeah.
They don't have to be. That doesn't mean it's true. It just means that it's unrelated to certain other claims.
Yeah. And
so I hid the fact that I had come to that conclusion for a fair while, because it was a pretty big deal at church. In fact, I remember one time before I actually stopped doing the whole young earth creationism thing, there was a mock debate that was held in my church's youth group, right?
A mock debate. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so I guess it was technically a debate. It's just that it was supposed to be a creation evolution debate, but they didn't have anyone who actually accepted evolution. So they just picked me because they were like, Tim's smart. By the way, my real name's Tim. That's open and on my channel. There's no worry about that. Kent Hovind used that name almost exclusively in my debate with him. And ever since then, I'm just like, all right, whatever. We'll just go. It's not a secret. I don't call myself that usually on the channel, but yeah, that's my actual first name is Timothy. Right. Yeah. So I didn't dox myself. That's been public for.
Didn't you write one of the books in the Bible?
Well, actually, so that's actually kind of funny because the Book of Timothy is actually the traditional authorship, which is probably broadly accurate, is that it was Paul writing to Timothy, who was the bishop of a church in, I want to say Thessalonica, but I'm not sure. I'd have to double check. But interestingly, Kent Hovind, who I sometimes respond to, has said at least a few times that Timothy wrote that book, which isn't true, and which, as someone who purports to be a minister in a Christian church, should probably know that like it starts with like, Dear Timothy. That's like the opener for the book. It's not by Timothy, it's to Timothy. And that's one of the things about a lot of the books in the Bible that are letters is that they're named after who they're to, not who they're by. The exceptions are 1st and 2nd John, and that's basically it. So yeah, it's a little funny there, but where was it? Oh, right, yeah. So the debate. So they decided I'm going to be the one who's going to defend evolution, even though I don't really believe it at the time. And I'm just like, all right, I guess. So, I started doing some research and, I had like a week or so it wasn't too extensive. Mm-hmm. But when I got in there, the arguments that I was getting from the other side were just so laughably ludicrous. I was just like, what's going on? Like, I remember at one point I was talking about fossils and talking about how there's an obvious faunal succession in the geological record. Like at the lowest strata, we get simple worm-like things and very basic plants and things like that. And then someone said, "How do you know that's a worm and not just a twig in the fossil record?" I was like, "What?" I mean, because it's segmented and it has setae and it has a burrow behind it. I mean, like what?
Twigs don't do that.
Right. That's none of those are twigs. Like, I get it. They're both sort of cylindrical long things, but like these aren't the kinds of things that you can just easily mistake. And it got to the point where I was basically just being heckled by the audience, at which point some of the adults shut it down. They were like, "No, pull the plug. We're done. We're not going to continue on with this." And
is that because of you or because of the way the other?
It was because, well, the other team actually was being relatively polite. It was the audience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the audience started just getting angry.
and did they not realize it was not audience participation, or?
Well, as far as I know, this was the only debate of that kind that was ever done in that youth group. Okay. And I doubt that anyone there had ever been to a formal debate. I certainly hadn't.
Right.
So it probably wasn't super clear that what the normal decorum was for this kind of event.
Okay.
But that was one of the things that kind of got me to be like, hey, there's something off about this whole thing, right? Like, why are we getting so angry about nonsense, basically? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is sort of a secondary matter, right? If evolution is true, then okay, I guess we have to reinterpret one part of the Bible. Whoop-de-doo. Like no one has ever had to reinterpret parts of the Bible?
Well, yeah, I see. I've always found that to be kind of just weird to me. Like, now they have this new evidence that's come to light since the writing of the book itself. So now they have to figure out a way to warp reality around their book.
Well, to some extent. But there's also, so I have oddly enough, my only degree is in history.
Okay. And
one of the things that you realize in history is that the farther back you go into the historical record, the less likely it is that your initial reading of a text is actually what the author intended to tell you by writing that text. Okay, because the thing is, like, the past is another country. And the idea there is that, like, even if you're looking at the past of your own country, like I live in the USA, if you're looking at documents from very early on in the history of the United States, say, the colonial era, mm-hmm. the assumptions that people make, the way they use words, the way they get points across isn't the same as the way we do it now.
No, of course not.
And so I do think there is some validity to saying there's a difference between what a modern reader is going to take out of an ancient text versus what that ancient text is trying to relay. So, for instance, a lot of ancient Near Eastern texts have very long ages in their genealogies, the Bible included. But the thing is that genealogy is actually like a subgenre in legendary writing in the in the Near East and Middle East. Mm-hmm. And it's not intended to be taken as a literal fact by the audience. It indicates things like the importance and wisdom of the person being listed in the genealogy. In fact, the genealogy isn't even supposed to be a literal step-by-step ancestry. It's supposed to include highlights of the ancestry involved.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that a lot of these sort of branches of Christianity and other religions tend not to realize is just like, even if you're right about the basic parts of your belief system, you cannot take these texts and just interpret them at first glance the way that you think someone in the 20th century would do, because they weren't written right. They weren't written by or for 21st century people.
Right.
And so yeah, it's a little bit weird, but that's the kind of thing that you get when you get people who are going to do things like deny evolution, which I like to compare to flat Earth. There's just no reason to believe it, and there are so many reasons not to.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a frequent viewer who's a creationist who one of my mods says he's just a troll. I think he's actually interested in the stuff, and
who is
I don't know. It's a guy named Unidentified Leviathan.
I've seen him before.
Yeah, he's a nice kid, and I just lost my train of thought entirely.
It left the station.
But no, it's like, look, you can, I don't know, the whole creationism thing. Oh no, that's what it was. He got very upset with me when I compared young Earth creationism to flat Earth. Of course, because he reminds me a lot of me, a lot like I was about his age, because he's fairly young.
Okay.
And smart, but convinced that this particular thing is right. And the thing is, if that's all you've been exposed to, then why wouldn't you think it's right?
Sure. You have nothing else to gauge it against.
Right. And that's actually one of the things that I think is a little bit dangerous about young Earth creationism, because ultimately, okay, so you don't think that animals evolved and share common ancestry? Like, grand scheme of things, what's that going to do to you as far as like consequences for your life? Mm-hmm. For most people, nothing. Like, you get a job as an electrician or a computer programmer or something, right? Like, it's not going to come up on the job interview. Hey, what do you think about human evolution?
Yeah, no, like, I've been to many job interviews and I can never remember them asking me that.
Right, exactly. Like, maybe if you want to be a professor of anthropology, it might come up, but that's very few people. But what the danger is that it can set up this idea that huge swaths of academia are just lying to you for their own evil purposes. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say that no one in academia has ever lied for their own purposes, but that's not the predominant thing that goes on.
No, it's not a common thing.
Right. It's a rather exceptional thing, and you can usually identify the areas where it's going to be more likely, and those are in areas where, they're actually usually in things like political science, because let's face it, I've noticed that political science tends to have a very strong status quo bias every place that it's practiced.
Yeah.
It's like, all the political scientists in China think the Chinese government is great. It's like, oh, okay. All the political all the political scientists in like Japan think that Japan is doing things just the right way. It's like, okay, I get it. I see how this is. But
that's the whole bias thing.
Yeah, but the thing is that when you get to things like biology or physics or things, that's not how it's working, right?
No.
So
bias doesn't count.
I mean, it can affect a given researcher, but the thing is that
sure,
because there's such an incentive to prove people wrong in especially the hard sciences, it's just what you do. It's why when they give those
peer reviews all about.
Right. And so, there's recently been some scandals about journals accepting just either factory written pieces or pieces that were intentionally nonsensical.
Yep.
But you notice those aren't in the hard sciences. Those aren't in biology or physics or astronomy or anything like that.
Yeah, or chemistry or anything. Yeah.
Right. You try putting in a bogus paper into, say a biology or a chemistry journal, it's not going to make it through.
No, it's going to be like, nope.
No. Right. Yeah. So but the thing is that young Earth creationism can kind of set you up to think that the whole thing is like that. That the whole thing is just
I don't doubt that.
And
I've debated with people and they've said, "Oh, I don't trust peer review." No, you shouldn't trust the shit peer review. There's good and bad. Well, I used the Clarivate website to determine which journals are respected and which aren't.
Nice. And another thing is that young Earth creationism sets up this idea that people changing their position is a bad thing. Because one of the big criticisms of science that you get in young Earth creationist circles is like, oh, they just change their beliefs or their, positions all the time. And it's like, yeah, when new data comes in that disconfirms your previous idea, you get rid of the previous idea because you were wrong.
Right.
If you don't do that, then you're just going to end up being wrong about nearly everything. And the only time you'll be right is on accident. Why would you want to be wrong about almost everything except on accident?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, like, it's just, and the thing is that even religions have done that. Like, there was a time not that long ago, historically speaking, when Christianity was pretty closely wedded to the idea of geocentrism. And to be fair, all of previous human thought had been geocentric. The Bible pretty obviously teaches a geocentric universe, or not necessarily teaches one, but it assumes one. Because I don't actually think any of the books of the Bible are out there in order to try and teach you geography.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either.
Yeah, but they assume a geocentric universe. That's part of the background of a lot of them. They talk about the Earth being unmovable and fixed and things like that. And it's like, well, clearly this isn't actually literally true. But most Christians don't have a problem with that.
Right.
And so it's like, well, why are you being sticklers about evolution when you're not? Actually, there was a creationist came to that church that I went to as a kid, and he started talking about how we have to take Genesis literally. And at this point, I was already well on my way out of young Earth creationism. Mm-hmm. And so I asked, well, so what about the floodgates of heaven that open up during the flood? Are there gates in the sky that God lets the water above the sky through? Because that's what it literally says.
Isn't there a firmament? How the hell do we get past that?
Right.
Isn't there water on the other side? Like, I think maybe
there is. The firmament is. So if you take Genesis as literally as creationists say they do, you come to a flat Earth with a dome over it that's solid, but it has gates in it to let rain in. Mm-hmm. And above that is a cosmic ocean.
Right.
And that's why the firmament separates the waters that are below the Earth from the waters above the Earth, because the Earth floats inside the cosmic ocean.
Right. If you think about it, though, I'm not saying that they knew this ahead of time, because I doubt it. But when people are in space, it kind of looks like they're floating in water anyways.
Right. It's true. And the thing is, you look up, the sky's blue. There's no obvious reason for the sky to be blue. Water comes raining down from the sky. It's not the worst conclusion to draw if you are, in fact, an Iron Age guy who's never been able to travel more than a few dozen miles from your hometown, which is the case for almost everyone throughout almost all of human history. Is most people never, ever traveled more than about 5 or 6 miles from the place they were born in their lives. So, what kind of conclusion do you come to about the Earth? Well, it seems kind of flattish. The sky seems to rotate over it. The sky's blue during the day. Water comes from the sky. Okay, there's a dome. There's water above the dome. The dome has some openings that lets the water through. Mm-hmm. It's not that crazy of an idea if you keep in mind the sort of the level of development and experience that these people have. But the thing is, even now, young Earth creationists don't take all of that literally. Even most of the flat earthers still don't take the whole floodgates part literally, because they don't think that there are holes in the firmament that the water comes through. Mm-hmm. I've never heard one say that, but that's what the Bible would say if you're going to take it that literally. Mm-hmm. And so I asked him this, and he was like, oh, well, some parts of it are figurative. And I said, well, why are the parts that you say are figurative and that you say are literal the parts that are literal and figurative? What if I think the 6 days is figurative? Or what if I think that the ages and the genealogies are figurative?
Right.
And he just said, well, there's going to be a question and answer session afterwards, which there wasn't.
No, fuck.
And then I caught up with him afterwards. And I asked him a few other questions, and his wife seemed to see that he was in some kind of distress and just pulled him away. And that was how that ended. And I was just like, well, wow. that was certainly a great showing for this young Earth creationism scholarship. And I wish I knew who it was, but I've forgotten. I don't think it was a big name. I know it wasn't either of the Hovins. I guess it could have been someone like a Bill McMurtry. I don't know if you know who Bill McMurtray is.
Yes, I do.
Do you? All right. I always hate it every time he says hello. Stop saying hello. Just say your points.
I know. He reminds me of that guy. There was this movie back in the day with the guy that was for fuck's sake, I hate it when I forget people's names. But he was in that movie 10 with Bo Derek. He played the drunk Arthur. He played that drunk guy Arthur. And anyway, he ends up in a Looney Tunes. He's an ad exec. And there's this guy walking around with a box of hellos. Hello. He kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, it's I don't think I have a video about Bill McMurtry, but I might make one just because he's someone who comes across as quite intelligent to dumb people. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say to dumb people, it's usually ignorance. Most young Earth creationists aren't actually stupid.
No.
I mean, some are, because that's just true for everyone. There's always going to be stupid people, but most of them are ignorant and misled. And that's not a character fault. That's one of the things that I try to really emphasize, because sometimes, and it's understandable, we get this sort of, especially in sort of the debunking community or the anti-creationism or counter-creationism, or however you want to term it. It's easy to get angry at people for believing these stupid things, and then, getting people elected to office who will say things like, well, I don't know about humans being related to the apes. And it's like, oh my God. But the thing is,
we're not related. We are apes.
Right. Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess you could say we're related to the other apes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah. We're in the same fucking family group.
Right. In fact, actually, we're closer to chimpanzees and bonobos. Well, I should say you're closer to chimpanzees and bonobos, since I'm obviously a dinosaur. But
of course,
humans are more closely related to chimpanzees and bonobos than chimpanzees and bonobos are to gorillas.
That's right.
So it's like it's extremely artificial to take humans out of that group. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I like that now people are starting to say that humans are apes, not that they descended from apes or that they're related to them. It's like, no, they are.
We are
apes, right? And so, but yeah, the average young Earth creationist.
We're just really fucking smart ones. That's well, maybe some of us are.
Well, yeah. Well, we're at least smart enough to have gotten our population up to levels unheard of in other apes.
And look at this computer.
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen a chimpanzee or a bonobo build a $3,000 computer. So some chimpanzees have started making rock tools, though. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple ones.
That's true. Sure.
Maybe they'll get there.
But anyway, crows are making tools these days.
That's true. Crows are really smart.
The Caledonian crow, actually.
Go team dinosaur.
Yeah.
But no, the average like lay person who's a young Earth creationism is neither stupid nor evil. The thing is that all these scientific areas are areas of rather particular interest, and this is all they've been exposed to. So I try to make sure that we don't condemn them too much for this, and instead we think about the fact that these are people who are misled. And the people who I do dislike are the professionals, the ones who I know better for a fact.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The ones who have been corrected numerous times, shown evidence numerous times, then continue to go on as if that never happened. Ever. So, and the ones who just are also blatantly ignorant. Like, if anyone hasn't, go watch my debate with Ken Hovind. It's interesting as an example of just how bad at science a professional creationist can be.
Oh, yes.
One of the things that I get him to admit is that he would not know how to identify the skeleton of a dinosaur as such, which means he doesn't know what a dinosaur is. And the thing is, it's fine if you don't know what a dinosaur is. Most people don't actually know. Right? Like if you ask the average person on the street, hey, what's a dinosaur? They're not going to give you the technically correct answer.
No. Because those things in Jurassic Park, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I think everything in Jurassic Park, except for the pterosaurs, were dinosaurs. But most people would actually lump them in with dinosaurs Anyway, oh no, I guess they had mosasaurs too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, there were a few non-dinosaur things, but almost everything in Jurassic Park was a dinosaur.
Yes.
Basically, everything that didn't swim or fly was a dinosaur in those movies.
Yes.
But the thing is, most people also don't go around calling themselves Dr. Dino, building a park called Dinosaur Adventureland, and billing themselves as being some kind of ministry built around dinosaurs. If you're going to do that, I'm going to call you out on not even knowing what a dinosaur is. And that's the thing for a lot of these people. Like, one of the newer things that I've seen some young Earth creationists on YouTube going on about is genetic entropy and genetic information. But you can't pin them down on that. It's like, okay, well, what's information? How do we measure it? How do we tell how much is in there? You say that we've lost information. Well, how much did we lose? Do we lose 18 bytes of information? Do we lose a gigabyte of information? Are we measuring information in bytes? Because the thing is, you can measure genome size in bytes.
Of course.
Every single base pair can be expressed as 2 bytes. And so if you count up the base pairs, multiply by 2, you now have the number of bytes of information in a genome. Is that what they mean? Well, no, because they also think that, insertions and duplications decrease information, even though that amount of information that you would get by adding up the number of base pairs multiplying by 2, that would be an increased amount of information. So you just can't pin them down on any of these things. And those are the people who are the dishonest ones. They're the ones who are either out to get money or are just so lost in their own belief bias that, intellectual honesty is just a completely foreign concept to them. And those are the people who I really have problems with, because those are the people who are inculcating children with anti-science attitudes, anti-academic attitudes, leaving them ill-prepared for any job in the life sciences or even most of the physical sciences, because young earth creationism, physics has to be wrong, astronomy has to be wrong, cosmogony has to be wrong, biology has to be wrong, geology has to be wrong, meteorology has to be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost all of science. In some interpretations, I've even seen younger creationist ideas that would break the theories of electromagnetism.
Really?
Yeah. There's some theories about sea decay, where the speed of light has decreased historically. Or not historically, from the beginning of the universe till now, the speed of light has been decaying on some kind of geometric function where it's approaching its current value as some kind of, it's almost at an asymptote at its current value. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that the speed of light is actually a factor in the equations, like Maxwell's equations, not in the versions that you usually use in school, because it's actually an underlying factor that's usually already accounted for. Mm-hmm. But if you were to derive them from the basic equations of, say, quantum mechanics, which is where they ultimately can be derived from, the speed of light is in there. And if the speed of light is higher, it affects all of the forces that have that as a term in determining their strength, which includes the electromagnetic force.
Right. Yeah. So
electromagnetism would have to change for creationism to be right.
It would.
And it's just like, or younger creationism.
I've never thought of it that way. I got to thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And so those are the things that get me, where it's like, I don't want significant portions of the population to believe that essentially all of science is invalid, because we complain about that same thing with flat Earth, but essentially there are no flat earthers, right? You could pack every flat earther in the world in a good-sized convention center. Mm. And they're not growing.
No.
Beach Price did ask how old I am roughly. I usually say I'm about 150 million years old. But
you look great for your age.
I know. For the purpose of this, I'll actually say I'm in my mid-30s. So.
And there's something else I wanted to address in the chat, actually. This Christopher Hansen fella is starting to get a little unruly. Christopher, if you're going to tell people to fuck off, you can fuck off out of my chat. And also, psychology is not actually considered a science. The closest it gets to a science is social sciences. It's considered a social study. Psychiatry, on the other hand.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far into it, but I have some problems with some of the ways that psychology has been done historically. And one of my big problems is that changes to the DSM tend to be what gets counted and why as a psychological disorder seems to depend primarily on things like politics, and it shouldn't. Either something should be identifiable as a disorder,
you're right,
or it shouldn't. And if you can't determine that outside of politics, then I don't actually think you have a real solid medical practice.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I am agreeing or disagreeing with anything. Like, I'm pretty sure that homosexuality shouldn't have been listed in the DSM-1 or whatever it was.
Oh,
right?
Hell no.
But the thing is that the fact that it was, and then wasn't taken out for any scientific reason that I can find, was basically taken out around the time that people started finding it acceptable societally. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a problem to me, because it means that you're basing at least some of these things not on what's actually a medical problem, but what's outside the societal norm. And being outside the societal norm isn't a medical condition. That's
right.
And that bugs me about psychology. But that's all I want to say there. I don't want to go too deep into it, because
sure,
I don't know what should be in there. I just know that the changes have been not very science motivated, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, I've got a lot of issues with it myself, but I'm not going to get into that here.
Yeah, it's a side issue, but I guess kind of pushing back towards actually exiting young Earth creationism, actually being honest about that. So after I had actually done that, and this was probably junior year of high school, I went to the bookstore and I bought a copy of The Origin of Species.
Okay.
And brought it home. And I had it in my backpack. And then I went to my room and I started reading. And at one point, my mom came in. And I realized, oh, crap, she's going to see the book. And at this point, I was like how old are you in junior year of high school? Like 16 or 17 or something?
Yeah, I'd say about that, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'd rather have had this be a porno, just a porn magazine, because that would have been a less lengthy conversation, honestly, than Origin of the Species. Because at least that would have been like, oh, what? I'm a 16-year-old kid. That's what we all do, right? Like, and then she'd be angry, but then it would just die down at that point after she took it or whatever. But instead, I had to come up with this whole spiel about how you should read books that had an important effect on the world, whether or not you agree with them, and actually do agree with that statement. It just was not actually the reason I was reading the book. And, and then she had to go and have some talk with my father about it. And it was just this whole thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I realized, well, I can't be, unless I want to have these conversations a lot, I'm going to have to just not talk about this at home at all.
Right.
And so for a long time, I just didn't talk about it at home. But then at some point, I started talking about it to some of the people I was closer with at the church. And then that spread around most of the church that I wasn't a creationist anymore. I was an evolutionist. Oh, no.
Evolutionist.
Right, exactly. And so I would have these conversations where people would say, well, would come to me.
New religion.
Right. They were like, oh, so like, are you believe in evolution? I was like, yeah, I do. And so then they would ask me these things like, well, why isn't there like a half a cat, half a dog? And I was like,
oh, yeah, the crocoduck thing.
Yeah. And I was like, because that would disprove evolution. That's one of the...
You'd see that at like a Barnum fucking circus or something.
Right. Like, and that's when I started to realize that most of the things that creationists ask for as proof of evolution are things that would disprove evolution if they were true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be like asking, okay, it would be like saying to a Christian, all right, so you want to convince me that Christianity is true. Okay, well, show me Jesus's bones, and then I'll believe that Christianity is true. Yep. It's like, well, if you could find Jesus's bones, that would disprove Christianity. So why would that be proof of Christianity? It's the same thing when you ask to see a half cat, half dog transition.
Yeah, that's true too. Because apparently he rose up, right? So
right.
There should be no bones. That's right.
Exactly. That's the whole point of Christianity, is that there isn't a body of Jesus because he rose from the dead and then went into heaven. So if there's a body, Christianity has to be false.
How convenient.
So it would be like a non-Christian asking for the bones of Jesus as proof for Christianity. Mm-hmm. It's like that completely contradicts the point of Christianity, to find the bones. So that's what happens when people especially creationists ask for proof of evolution. It's like, well, what if you showed me this? And it's like, well, if I could show you that, then I wouldn't believe in evolution. Like if I could show you a crocodile laying an egg that hatches into a bird, I would stop believing in evolution, because that's impossible given our current understanding of evolution. That's right. But that's the kind of thing they ask for, and that is when I first realized that, and it's when I realized that
it's what they think is a transitional species,
Oh yeah, they think that evolution involves going from one kind of thing that exists now to another kind of thing that exists now. Yeah. And that's the other thing that bothers me, is the word kind in the words that are used for kind in like the Bible in Hebrew or Greek or things, they mean the same basic thing as it does in English. It's a group of things that are similar to some undefined degree. Right. Because, you can say things like, what kind of beer are you drinking? And the answer can be like a brand name, a particular brew name. It can be a general category, like, oh, I'm drinking an IPA or a lager.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The word kind just asks about a particular group with no set level of specificity. And it's a handy word to have in languages because you don't always want to take the time to be super specific. But creationists try to turn that into this scientific term. It's like, I don't think that's what the Bible was talking about, guys, because it says that there are kinds of beasts, and it says that humans are in the beast kind, and it also says that there are kinds of locusts, but kinds of creeping things, and that bats are in the locust kind. Like,
yeah, I thought bats were in the bird kind.
Well, bats are in both kinds.
Oh, right. Things with wings.
But that's the thing, is that when the Bible says kind, it's not talking about a formal taxonomic classification. It's just talking about a group of animals that you can group together for some purpose. And the thing is, there are ways in which you could group together bats and locusts and have that be reasonable, like flying pests. Okay. If you think of them both as pests that fly around in swarms, then in that degree, they're the same kind of animal. That's not unreasonable. But it becomes unreasonable when you start asking about that being like a biological classification. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of one of the things that helped push me towards, maybe this is something that I should talk about and try to fix. Unfortunately, there was a very big gap between that sort of thing and then me actually doing anything with the channel, because I did things like join the Navy. And it's very hard to maintain any kind of internet presence when you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for half the year. Like, you just can't.
Problematic.
Right, exactly. Like, you can't upload to YouTube on the ship internet that's only sometimes there, and you only get like an hour of it, and it's extremely low in bandwidth. So it just wasn't going to happen. And then it sort of fell away from like the front of my mind, and I started doing some more art. And I started to learn how to do stuff in 3D, doing, CGI and learning how to sculpt and texture things. And then I realized, hey, I could combine this sort of thing in the back of my mind about like, hey, tell people how stupid creationism is, get them out of that. And on the other hand, the whole artistic thing. And so I was like, all right, well, I will make an avatar or something, and then I'll start uploading videos. And so I did, and I was looking for a name, and I was like, well, I'll do a dinosaur avatar because people like dinosaurs, and it goes with the whole creation, evolution sort of thing, because everyone likes dinosaurs, and creationists like dinosaurs. Everybody likes dinosaurs. Quote unquote evolutionists like dinosaurs. And so I wanted to make it alliterated. And so I was going through like adjectives in my head, and I was like, okay, what adjective can I fit that starts with a D that I could actually make a dinosaur fit that description? And this is the one I landed on, was Dapper. So I made a little Ceratosaurus, and I put a top hat on him, and I gave him a little tie. And then I moved across the country, and my computer didn't boot up anymore.
Why?
The motherboard did not make it through the move. Yeah, I actually isolated to that. Yeah, so then I was like, well, I don't have access to those files like at all, and I was having trouble getting the hard drive to work too. I still think I could probably recover it. So for a while, I was just not doing anything, and then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to buy a dinosaur model. And so some of my earlier videos that you'll see have a Allosaurus. It's a little bit on the spindly side, made by a CGI artist named Ben Jewer, who does a lot of Jurassic Park themed dinosaur sculpts, which means that most of them are only about as accurate as you would get from Jurassic Park.
Sure.
So his sculpts have very high artistic quality. Accuracy suffers a little bit because he's trying to push the Jurassic Park style, which I get. It's popular.
Sure it is.
So I bought that from him, put a top hat on it, put a little bow tie on there, and that was okay for a little while. And then I just sat down and I said, you know what? I'm going to sculpt a brand new, even better Ceratosaurus than my old one. It's going to be awesome. And I think it is better, actually.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, my current one, I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely the character model I worked the longest on of anything I've ever done. It took about 2.5 months or so of just solid, every day I would sit down and I would do 2 or 3 hours of work on it.
Yeah.
And it took me getting this computer though, because I was trying to do it on my laptop that I bought as at the holdover. Like, I need to have a computer at bases. So I got that laptop, but it couldn't handle me creating this character like at all. It got to the point where I was about to start sculpting, and the computer was just like, no, I'm just going to update your scene every 5 or 6 minutes if you're going to sculpt. I was like, well, I can't do that. So I had to wait.
Have the power.
Right. So I had to wait for this computer to get purchased and assembled. By the way, my co-host for my live stream series, Kent with Bent, where I live debunk Kent Hovind, he is the one who put this computer together for me. So shout out for Bent Hovind. He also does the music for my my intros for my scripted videos. And if you want to check out any of his music, go to coppermagma.com. You can get an extended play there for free. So yeah, they are a sludge metal band based out of Tucson. And if you want to hear any more of their music than that, the actual song that I use for my opener has currently not actually been recorded, but they have it on their list of songs to record in studio at some point. So
very cool.
Yeah. So there's a little shout out for Bent Hovind. Go check out his band's webpage. They have merchandise. Buy a mug or something.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Mark, I think, had to take off. So.
Oh, bye, Mark. But so yeah, that's when I really started doing this stuff. It kind of took off with the debate, because then I started sharing the debate in a few places and showing it to some friends and things like that. And I started to get a few followers here and there, and I started to pick up. And then at one point, I went on one of Steve McRae's shows because I was in the nuclear Navy, and that got me a few more subscribers. And then at one point, I was on a hangout with Craig FTFE. Yep. And so then he gave me a shout out on one of his videos without telling me he was going to do that. So I was actually sitting in a hotel room, talking to a few people, including Bent, on Discord. And I glanced over and I just clicked refresh on my YouTube channel, just because I was like, I wonder if anything happened. And it was like, oh, I've got like 100 new subscribers.
Man, I wish something like that would happen for me.
I know. It was weird. So I'm like, what's going on? And then I start getting these messages on videos like, oh, hey, FTFE sent me. I'm like, what? So I had to go watch his last video, and at the end of it, he's like, oh, I want to introduce you to the Dapper Dinosaur. He's a cool talking dinosaur who's taken the fight to creationists. I was like, oh, okay, thanks.
Have you ever done any work with Aaron Ra?
So I've emailed him. I haven't done anything beyond that. I had an idea, and I thought maybe he might be a good resource for it, but I haven't really moved forward with the idea. The idea is I want to get someone who's really good at textual criticism for the New Testament,
right?
Together with someone who's really good at phylogenetics, and talk about the commonality between those two disciplines. Because one of the things is, because the New Testament has such a large number of manuscript copies, granted, a lot of them are tiny, but there's still a huge volume of them, and there's still a lot that actually are complete copies. And the Christians are right when they say that there are essentially no other books of that age with that deep and wide manuscript history. It really is true. The New Testament is essentially unparalleled in terms of how much manuscript evidence we have for it. But one of the things that lets you do is it lets you draw a family tree for manuscripts. You can say,
the Old Testament.
The problem with the Old Testament is that its manuscript history starts much longer after its composition than it does for the New Testament.
You're right. That is true.
So it's not so clear what has happened before the manuscript history starts, because there seem to have been a number of recensions that got standardized at various points.
Sure, yes.
So it's a little bit harder. There is a textual history like that, but one of the problems is that it's mostly isolated to the Masoretic text, which was a intentional standardization of the text in a form that definitely wasn't unbiased, because the rabbis who made the Masoretic text explicitly had as one of their goals to counter Christian theological arguments. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to comment as to whether or not that's a good goal, but what it does mean is that they were not completely unbiased in codifying the Masoretic text. So that's one of the problems we run into with the Hebrew text.
Right.
But with the Greek text, you can do things like you can say, all right, this group of manuscripts all contain the same scribal error at this point in the text, or even just a variant. It's not always errors. Sometimes it's like this text contains the theta nu with a line over it abbreviation for theon, whereas this other text actually spells out theta eta omicron nu for theon. which is the accusative singular for God.
Mhm.
Not to be confused with theta, eta, omega nu, which would be the data plural. Yeah, I know some Greek. Which actually surprises people sometimes, because sometimes people try to make arguments based on the Greek, and I'm like, do you have any Greek background? Could you say a single Greek word? Could you spell a Greek word? And the answer is always no. But anyway, I'm not an expert. But anyway, but you can look at that and you can say, okay, well, this subgroup of those texts has this other scribal variation, whereas the other subgroup has a different one. And so you can actually draw this tree of texts going back to ancestor texts, because any one manuscript of the Bible has to have been copied from a previous one. And they tend to inherit the previous errors, just like organisms tend to inherit the previous mutations from their ancestry. And so the techniques that you use to determine which manuscript groups texts of the New Testament belong to are very strongly analogous to the techniques that you use in genetic phylogenetics to determine what groups organisms belong to. Because in the same way that organisms can inherit mutations, texts of the New Testament have inherited scribal variations, some of which are errors, some of which aren't. So that's a project that has been sort of on the back burner for like a year now. I have no idea if it's actually going to go forward, but I like the idea. But it's also one of those things where it's such a big thing that it's hard for that to ever become the thing I'm going to focus on next.
Right. Okay.
Because, it's like, I got to put out another video this week. I got to do something. And when you're doing videos that can take you 40, 50 hours of work, it's like, just the setup for that video would probably take days and weeks. So it would be a nice thing. And I emailed Aaron Ra about that. And he thought it seemed like an interesting idea. I might try to do something else. I've also just today sent an email to Craig from FTFE, and I think I might want to do a discussion with him about whether or not teaching kids pseudoscience like flat earth or creationism actually counts as child abuse. And he's pretty strongly in the yes camp, and I'm actually sort of in the no camp. Even though I don't think it's a good idea, I don't know that I would go so far as to say that it's actually child abuse. Because
would you consider lying to children child abuse?
Not per se.
I guess it depends on the lie.
Right. Like if you tell if a kid's like, oh, hey, I want a cookie, and you're just like, no, we don't have any. Is that child abuse? No. Is it the best thing to do? No.
Different, I think.
Well, that's the thing. That's why it depends on the lie, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
I could agree with that.
And so, but the other thing is though that teaching kids these things isn't actually usually lying, because the people who are teaching these kids this honestly believe it.
They believe it, sure.
Right.
But
so
that
like when I was
excuse it.
Well, but that's one of the things is at some point everyone has false beliefs, and they're likely to tell their kids those things. So it has, to me, I have to have a pretty high level of harm before I'm going to say simply telling your kids something that you honestly believe but that's wrong is abuse. Now, if it's like anti-vax stuff where there's a direct measurable harm from a medical standpoint, that's a different matter. But I just don't think there's that direct medical harm involved in things like flat earth or young earth creationism.
By the way, I'm in the no camp as well. I don't think it is.
Okay.
But I'm just, a little bit of a devil's advocate there.
Oh, no. Hey, I appreciate that. And so that's something that I'm hoping to get set up. I would like Team Skeptic to be involved as sort of like a mediator in the discussion, because I think it's important to have that. So I sent him an email today saying, hey, I was thinking about doing this. Would you be interested? Normally he and I talk on Twitter, but Craig's in Twitter jail yet again. He got out
again?
Yeah, he got out of Twitter jail for like 3 days, and then he went right back in. And the thing is,
Craig.
The thing is, currently, it seems like the reason is because he's calling flat Earth child abuse. So I thought it might be topical.
Oh, is it? Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I can't. It's stupid, but I don't know if it's child abuse.
Well, that's the thing. And the thing is, I do agree that it's bad for your kids to do, but I don't think that just having a thing that's bad for your kids is itself child abuse. Like, it's bad to give your kids, lunch at McDonald's too often. But if you do it,
it's not child abuse.
Yeah. Is that really child? No, probably not.
No.
So that's some stuff. I've got
Kids can actually, the older you get, the less easy it is to sort of digest that kind of shit. So at their age, that shit could go through them, and it wouldn't even the body would be like, I don't really think that was good, but it's gone now. It's been used.
Yeah, it's out of there.
Yeah.
Oh, and thank you for linking my my Patreon, Inquisitive Quandary. And seriously, come over and subscribe, watch some videos.
Yeah.
I've got 3 playlists. This is actually going to go on my my Dapper on Other Channels playlists because I have that for when I appear on other people's channels.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. So you can see like my appearance on FTFE's channel for when we did a Stupid Humans episode about young Earth creationism, where we tackled Eric Hovind. So you can see that there. You can see the time I was on a show about nuclear science and nuclear power with Steve McRae and Landon Kurt Knoll. That's on there.
So he did too.
Yeah. This will be on there. I think there's at least one other thing up there, but I also have a live stream playlist and my scripted educational playlist. And so if those two have almost all of my videos, I have a few videos that aren't technically on topic and they don't go on either of those. So like when Kent Hovind decided to use Rachel Oates' self-harm to score rhetorical points, I made a quick video about how scummy I thought that was.
Fuck.
Yeah. So I also had
I was livid.
Yeah, I couldn't make it last too long because I had to leave. In my video, I actually said I can't keep talking about this. I have to go now, and I hit stop recording, and that was the audio.
Enraged, man.
Yeah, because it's just like I get it. You disagree with her, well then attack the arguments that she's having. Don't call out how she was cyberbullied into self-harm. Don't use that for your cheap rhetorical tricks. And I had people defending him, even on my comments, saying things like, "Well, he offered to let her stay at his dinosaur Adventureland." Like, I'm like,
what?
An emptier gesture could not be conceived of.
You know what I was gonna say? Hey, don't hurt yourself. Like, what the fuck?
Like, and it's not like he offered to pay for her to get there either. Like, if he said, "Oh, hey, if you want a place to be alone and unplug from the world for a few days or a week or so, I'll pay your way to come to the United States and you can hang out in one of our cabins," then at least I'd be like, well, still not exactly an inviting offer, but at least it's practical. But I mean, this is a woman who had trouble making her rent that week because her income went down because she wasn't doing anything on the internet.
I know all about it, man.
She's not flying to Alabama to go hang out in some cult compound
before she pays her rent.
Right, exactly. Like, no.
Yeah, no, that was utterly ridiculous. And actually, her and I had a couple of good laughs over that one.
Yeah. So I made a quick video about that. Like, that's not on any of my playlists. As far as upcoming stuff, though, I have 2 things coming up tomorrow. So I'm doing a sort of Europe-friendly time Kent with Bent episode because Bent isn't going to be at work tomorrow. So at 11,
Lucky guy.
I know, at 11 a.m., we're going to, that's Pacific time, I guess 2 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to go live with an episode of Kent with Bent. And then at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, my next scripted video is going to premiere. So there's a lot of opportunity to watch some Dapper Dinosaur tomorrow, no matter where you live. So,
well, you're Pacific time too, though.
No, I'm Mountain time.
Oh, that's right. You're an hour. I kept thinking because I was talking to you and somebody else at around the same time, so I probably got the time zones confused.
In fact, I'm specifically Mountain Standard, and I don't go to Mountain Daylight. I live in Arizona,
right?
And I don't live on the Navajo Reservation because, confusingly, the Navajo Reservation does practice daylight saving time, but the rest of Arizona doesn't, except for the Hopi Nation, which is entirely inside the Navajo Nation. They also don't do daylight savings time. So there's a part, if you're careful, you can go stay in Arizona, hit daylight standard time, daylight savings time, daylight standard time, then get back into daylight savings time before you hit New Mexico.
Sounds like a real good time.
Yeah, it's a little, but then again, it's pretty obvious when you're in either the Navajo Nation or the Hopi territory, because I mean, they're not subtle about it. You know, they've got all there's big road signs like visit the Navajo Village Shopping Center, native crafts, authentic, have some fry bread. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, I definitely know where I am.
I'm kind of getting hungry now that you said that.
Want to go get some Navajo fry bread?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, hey, come to Northeast Arizona, and you can get as much of it as you want. Of course, you can also get like a Subway or a McDonald's, but
it'd probably take me about 15 hours, but I could do it.
Well, I used to drive every week as part of my last job to just outside Vegas from Phoenix.
Yeah, but I'm up on, you know where Seattle is. I'm 2 hours north of Seattle. So.
Okay, yeah, actually, I used to live in Bremerton. When I was
did you?
Yeah.
Cool. Washington State. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was thinking today, like last week or so, I felt like I'm in Washington because it's been raining almost every day for the last week. And
a lot of that here.
This is also not a secret. I live in Phoenix.
Okay. Which is like a cloud shows up and you guys panic.
Right. It's like the least rainy city in the United States. Actually, no, it's actually the second sunniest city in the United States. First is actually Yuma, Arizona. I remember that now. And it's also the fourth sunniest city in the world.
Wow.
So Yuma is actually the sunniest city in the world, and the next two are somewhere in Egypt, and then it's Phoenix. But for the past week, there's been no sun, and it's just been constant either rain or drizzle. And it's getting a little annoying, guys, because I'm like, I moved away from Washington State for a reason.
It's the Heart Project, man.
The Heart. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Which actually reminds me, I've been thinking about doing some other pseudoscience stuff besides just creationism. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I probably won't do medical woo because it makes me furious.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, dude, I'm a chemist, so...
Oh, my goodness.
Imagine how much fun I have with that shit.
Oh, man. Well, to me, it's... The reason I can do like creationism is because, like I said, okay, so you believe the Earth is 6,000 years old and that humans rode dinosaurs and that there's such a thing as kinds. Like, it's really, really, really wrong. But on the other hand, you're not going to die from that.
No, of course not.
Whereas, like, if you're going to give yourself an enema consisting of industrial bleach, yeah, you might die.
No, not might. You will die.
Some people have survived those.
Well, yeah, then they probably really didn't get a lot up there. If you're doing like even a beer can full or half of a beer can full, and that's going to kill you.
But that's the thing for me is like I get really upset when people talk about stuff like that in a way that I don't with like creationism because I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I guess you can be stupid if you really want to be.
It's just ridiculous, is what it is.
But yeah, or people who are like, oh, I have cancer and I've tried everything. And it's like, did you try everything? And the answer is like, well, I didn't try chemo because I don't want the side effects. But I tried acupuncture, and now I'm smoking a whole lot of weed.
Okay, the weed part's great if you're looking for the pain dealing, and that's fine. But that's not going to cure your shit.
Exactly.
So go to the chemo guy, and then you can go home and smoke a fucking joint after.
Right.
Okay?
And hey, the joint will help with the nausea and lack of appetite.
It will.
So I'm not saying don't smoke the weed, but if you think that weed and acupuncture is going to fix your melanoma, you're just going to die.
True. Although they have had some promising results with cannabinoids, like cannabinoid oil or cannabis oil.
That's true.
CBD oil. They have had some promising results, but it's not conclusive yet. So,
well, it's not conclusive. And the other thing is, in order to be an effective medication, even let's just say, if the anti-cancer effects have been absolutely 100% proven, it's still the case that in order to effectively treat yourself with that particular chemical, you're going to have it in the appropriate dose at the appropriate schedule. And you going home and smoking a joint isn't that.
Smoking it won't help.
Well, that's the other. Well, even if you're taking, cannabis oil orally, unless you know what the right dosage and the right schedule is, you're not fixing your problem.
Right, which is why I always emphasize to talk to a professional about it.
Right, and so, I'm a big supporter of further research on marijuana because I think. Sure. I'll say one thing: the fact that cocaine is a Schedule II drug and marijuana is a Schedule I drug is one of the most insane things in the world to me.
I know.
You can go get a federally approved cocaine prescription.
Yes.
That's a real thing. Pharmacies can't carry cocaine, but they can take cocaine deliveries to fill your prescription. They can't store it there, but yeah, you can get cocaine at a pharmacy. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to.
Look at the.
Okay, keep it as a Schedule 2 drug. That's fine, but come on, it's time to take marijuana out of Schedule 1. That's ridiculous.
Agreed. We have here. I mean, also, lots of drugs are derived from cocaine anyway, so that's probably why. Like Novocaine, that's one of them, and most of the drugs that end in cane come from cocaine.
What about deadly, colorless, odorless, tasteless iocane?
Well, I wouldn't recommend taking that without someone there with you knowing what they're doing.
But I spent many years building up a tolerance to iocane.
Did you?
Well,
was that part of a military thing?
No, that was from The Princess Bride.
Oh my goodness! Right. Look at me asleep at the wheel here. I'm usually all over shit like that. Sub-referencing crack.
Actually, I think I used an iocane reference in one of my videos recently. I don't know if anyone got it. My videos sometimes have very subtle references that people tend not to get. And one of the things is I'm a little bit snarky, but usually I have a pretty serious tone. So I try to be pretty subtle if I'm going to slip in some just off-topic humor.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that in one of my recent videos there was an iocane reference.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And nobody got it?
I don't know if no one got it, but no one said anything about it. There was one that someone got. Oh, someone got my my Ghost reference. So Ghost comes from an older episode of Best of the Worst from Red Letter Media when they were doing one of their it was a Neil Breen film, and one of the guys there, Rich Evans, is trying to explain the plot, and the main character's wife sometimes appears as a skull, and sometimes she appears as a ghost in his dreams or something. And sometimes she appears as a ghost in a hallucination or something, but he's also got her skull that he talks to. And so at one point, he just smashed the words skull and ghost together, and she was like, she's a ghost. And so I worked that word into one of my videos, and someone did get that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So and I know Benthoven, that's not his real name, but we call him that for comedic effect.
You mean his name's not Bent?
No, it's not. It's not. Not only is it not Bent, it's also not even Hovind.
Good. Yeah. I thought maybe his parents got drunk one night when they named him.
No. He's Ben. In fact, I often slip up and just call him Ben, and he's like, "It's Bent." I'm like, "Oh yeah, right. Sorry." But he got that one, but he didn't. He just told me, in person because we see each other in person every few months, and we talk on Discord most days. So. Yeah, he got that because he and I both watch a lot of Red Letter Media because they're fun. They're a fun group. And which reminds me, actually, he and I, as well as Cheshire Vic, who you might know from some of Steve's streams.
I know Cheshire.
So, as well as another guy who doesn't have a big internet presence, we all do a movie commentary / riff track show every once in a while called the CBAD Show, CBADD. So you type in the CBAD Show on YouTube, and you should find our channel. We've done Night of the Living Dead. We just recently did the original Little Shop of Horrors. We did My Cousin Vinny, the first 2 Godzilla movies so far. We did
first 2 of the original.
Yeah, we did Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again.
Oh wow, okay.
And we actually have to re-record our commentary track for King Kong versus Godzilla. Because I was trying to be clever and separate out my audio for mixing later. Instead, what I did was just not record my audio.
Perfect.
Right. So last week, they're like, all right, let's upload the King Kong versus Godzilla. And I open it up in my editor, and I hit play to say, how is this going to go? And I'm like, there's just big silences where I should be. So,
and then people are answering you. Oh yes,
exactly. People are talking to me, and there's just no response. And so I'm like, well, sorry guys, we're gonna have to not upload this. We'll have to re-record that. So, we try to do a Godzilla about every month or so, which means that we might get through the Godzilla movies in about 2.5 years.
I know, because there's you can throw in some Gamera movies too if you want.
We might change it to like a a kaiju movie every month or so.
But
then again, it would take a long time just to get through all the Godzilla movies because
True.
I mean, there's one coming out next year.
Yeah.
And then Toho has
King
announced.
Kong.
Yeah. And Toho has announced that they plan to allow Legendary to renew their license. And
really,
so they actually came out and they said, "Here's what we would like. We would like to allow Legendary to renew their license for our licensed characters, so Godzilla, Rodan, King Ghidorah, and Mothra, with the one change that we will also be allowed to make live-action movies with the same characters in a different continuity." So Toho is planning on starting their own Godzilla continuity in the next few years, while allowing Legendary
again.
Right. Well, I mean, so the whole Millennium era was basically a new continuity with every movie.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the only time they released more than one movie in the same continuity in the Millennium era was the Kiryu movies, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS. Those were in the same continuity, and they were both Millennium films. But that was it. Other than that, it was every single time they were just like, "Nope, we're going to reboot Godzilla." It's like, yeah, but you just rebooted him 2 years ago. We're going to do it anyway. You're using the same Goji suit. It's still a reboot.
Yeah. I'd say the worst one had to be the Roland one.
Oh, I don't even know if I'm going to count that one.
I know.
It's terrible. Yeah, don't watch what was it, 1998?
Eight.
Yeah, I think, don't watch the 1998 Godzilla movie from Roland Emmerich. It's just bad. I mean, maybe if you want to get drunk and watch a bad movie, you could, because it does have some so bad it's good moments, like the fact that every single character is the comic relief, but none of them are good at it. That can get you some comic value there.
I don't know. I kind of like the end of it when all the little ones were chasing everyone around.
I mean, it certainly has some amusing points. You can also watch almost the entire voice cast of The Simpsons because almost all of them are in that movie.
That's right. That's right, too. Yeah. Shit, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, pretty much everyone who ever voiced a character in The Simpsons is in that Godzilla movie for no reason.
They're probably friends. With the, we know a guy.
That could very well be. But yeah, like Harry Shearer plays like the main, like the female lead's boss, and like Hank Azaria is in there, and also there's a Siskel and Ebert clones are in there as the mayor and his assistant.
That's right. Yeah.
But they're like visual clones for Siskel and Ebert, but they're never used to make some kind of commentary about movie criticism or make jokes at Siskel and Ebert's expense. They just look like Siskel and Ebert, and there you go.
And that's it.
It's like, is this supposed to be like some kind of meta joke, fourth wall breaking thing? But it doesn't seem like it because they don't do anything that would be that way.
No.
Yeah, so don't watch that movie if you can, unless you're gonna get drunk or high with friends. Don't watch the 1998 Godzilla movie.
I do that all the time. Anyway,
well then, hey, go watch that Godzilla movie.
I remember going to see that Emmerich fucking version in the theater. I saw all excited. I can't wait to see how they kind of redesigned them. And then I'm looking at them like, fucking, I'm throwing my popcorn on the ground, my drink on the ground. I'm like, fuck, it's just an iguana. And I walked out of here.
Yeah. I've heard the cartoon was actually pretty good, though.
Which one?
The one that was based on the 1998 Godzilla.
See, I don't think I ever saw that. I remember the old one that I saw way back in the day.
The Hanna-Barbera one?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they made a I believe it was actually an American one, and the idea was that one of the little Godzillas survived, and it ended up imprinting on some human. I think it was actually one of the characters from the live action movie, like in cartoon form, like that was the person he imprinted on. And then for some reason that Godzilla was sterile, so it wasn't going around laying eggs.
Right.
And so because it imprinted on that guy, it started defending the humans from other monsters that would come up out of the ocean, or that evil people would genetically engineer or something. Mm-hmm. And so it was actually, that design for Godzilla fighting other giant monsters, which is probably what should have happened in the first place.
Yeah.
Because Godzilla is usually at his best fighting other monsters, no matter what he looks like.
Yep, that's true.
It's one of the reasons why a lot of people weren't very happy with the anime trilogy. It's because, Godzilla doesn't fight any monsters up until the very end, and even then,
fights the people.
Yeah, and at the end, he just kind of gets bunched by King Ghidorah. Doesn't really have
a really weird version of King Ghidorah too.
Right. Exactly. And then it's the humans that fix the problem completely. And then, like,
I did like the animation style for those.
Oh, yeah. The cell shaded 3D stuff. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And if you ignore the fact that these are supposed to be Godzilla movies, I think they're actually pretty decent. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that they're not what people are usually looking for from Godzilla.
No.
That's one of the reasons why I actually like the most recent American one. Is because there was just a bunch of giant dinosaur-like monsters punching each other. Like, okay, good. I would like that, please. Thank you.
That's what we're used to.
Right. That's like
what we like. That's what we go for.
Oh, Godzilla's going to be like eating the last remaining head of, Ghidorah while he breathes fire through its own mouth or something. Okay, yeah, that's cool. I'll take that. So, spoilers in case you haven't seen that, but really you should have by now.
Yeah, it's actually I kind of liked it. I thought it kind of felt a little bit like the classics that I used to watch as a kid.
Yeah. So. I mean, the plot was extremely weak, but I wasn't there for that.
Most of them are.
Yeah, I wasn't there for the plot. I was there to watch giant monsters punch each other.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Well, I just looked down at the clock and we are 20 minutes over the hour.
Sorry about that, everybody.
No, I could go on with you all night, dude. Totally. But I do think we should take a little bit of a break because I'm going to go and grab a couple more beers and have a quick cigarette, and then I'll come back in. Maybe I'll take a puff off a doobie while I'm out there, and we'll do an after party. So,
all right.
Man, this has been fascinating.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I knew you were a smart guy, so I knew I was in for something.
And a Godzilla nerd.
Yeah, which now you've just gone up like another notch in my book. So. That's even more awesome. But yeah, Tim, man, thanks so much for joining me today. That's been really fucking awesome.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good. Well, you were in control of this whole thing, and I'm just like, yes. Yeah. Everyone that comes to my show finally gets some education as well.
Nice. Well,
I'm not just hearing my shitty dad jokes all the time.
Hey, you know what? There's a certain way to appreciate dad jokes. You got to appreciate them. You have to be in a certain mindset to get them.
I suppose. I hated my dad's jokes.
Well, yeah, that's the point of dad jokes.
And now I'm telling them. Anyway. All
right. Well, I'll see you for the what we call after party. Is that what we're calling it?
We're calling them an after party because they are always like a party. So
all right, yeah, send me the watch link and the link to get in, and yeah,
I will for sure. And guys, remember, I do have the links, any relevant links below: his Patreon, his Twitter, and his YouTube channel. And I saw that IQ had dumped his merch channel or his merch stuff in the chat as well, which is awesome.
Yes, the merch. I've been pretty happy with the merch. I've seen some of the t-shirts and some of the mugs, and they actually came out pretty high quality. Teespring did a really good job. And
it's really good, actually, from what I know.
And I intentionally made a sort of a cartoon shaded version of my avatar. Mm-hmm. It's still actually rendered in 3D, but it has like the black outlines, and it has only a few color variations for shading, specifically to help it look better on merchandise. So for most of that merchandise, you're not just getting someone trying to print a photograph quality CGI image. You're actually getting something that was specifically designed to go on merch.
Which is awesome. And they pop more that way, if you ask me.
Exactly. So if you're a fan and you want to toss me a few dollars, rather than just donating, get something. Get a sticker, get a mug, get a shirt.
Yeah, exactly. I'm definitely picking up a sticker because I collect stickers. I got all kinds of stickers, man.
I think I have 3 kinds of stickers.
Faithless Forum.
Nice.
Godless Engineer.
Okay.
What else do I got? Street Epistemology. Okay. It's your hell, you burn in it.
So
and a few more.
I've got some die cut stickers, and I've got at least one, maybe more, square sticker. So I think that the square sticker is actually my avatar on set. So I do have some merch. It's actually the high quality image with all the like photoreal, or well, not quite photoreal, but close to photoreal CGI on my set. So you can get like there's a pillow like that. There's some posters like that. I think there's a sticker like that. So if what you're looking for is in fact that very nice avatar in its full CGI rendered quality, that's
the one I want.
All right.
That's the fucking one I want, for sure. All right, so guys, thanks for hanging out with Tim and I for doing this show today. It's been a lot of fun. You guys are probably a little bit more smarter than you were when you came into the show, like me. So I'm going to do an after show, or an after party, as I call them. If you are interested in getting involved in the after party, you can send me a message, either Twitter or Facebook. I would recommend Twitter because I'm more there than I am on Facebook nowadays. And we will jump into that. It's going to be about 10 minutes or so before we do that. So grab yourself something to drink, a refreshment. And remember, the guys, if you do like what I do here and you want to help support the channel, I do have links below in multiple ways, exactly 3 of them, that you can do that. And I also have my link to the Discord if you guys do want to join my Discord. Oh,
and hey, 4 people have subscribed. So I'm going to assume that's all from the chat. Thank you.
Probably. Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, man. It's been awesome having you on. So let's jump into the after party and make it memorable.
All right. I'm going to go get myself another Coca-Cola because I'm boring tonight.
That's okay. I'll drink for both of us.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, all right. See you in a few.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And like I always say at the end of these things, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.